Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for Score Buddy webinar, Learning and Development in 2024, How to Use AI Coaching and Developing New Skills. Before we get started, you might like to know where our audience is tuning in from today. So we have a large amount of viewers from the US, from the UK and Ireland, and we also have locations all around the globe, as you can see on our lovely pie chart there. And industries, we have a great mixture, so a lot from technology, FS and healthcare, also transport, retail and other industries.
Many thanks, Laura. So my name is David Bosang and I look after the entire customer journey here at ScoreBuddy. I'm joined by two learning and development experts and also a colleague from ScoreBuddy. So first up, Roni, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, David. My name is Roni Borri, so I'm the head of learning, development and performance at Abtran. I have nearly 2 decades of experience, more years than I care to admit, in learning and development, and have seen it evolve many times, and quite interestingly over that time. So yeah, I think we're at a really interesting time in this space. So looking forward to discussing that with you today.
Great, and thanks so much for sharing your time. And look, you said decade, but we all just heard 2, so you're fine. Thanks, Ronnie. Francis, would you like to make yourself known to the audience, please?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Frances Kleven. I'm the director of our customer success team at LearnUpon. LearnUpon is a learning management system, and I will also say that I have 2 decades in learning and development, both on the academic side of things and now in corporate learning. But I actually think it's really exciting for this topic today of the things that we're thinking about in terms of advancement, but also the things that have stayed the same in the science of learning and how people learn, because I think important to remind ourselves that actually some of that stays the same. But delighted for this conversation. I love talking about learning, so thank you so much for spending this hour with us.
Yes, likewise. And you've kept the bar high in terms of mentioning how many decades you've been involved in L&D. So it's no pressure on our third guest, Lara. Audience, you've heard from Lara already, but she has a key role later on in this webinar. Lara, over to you for your introduction.
Yeah, thanks, David. My name is Lara. I'm a student studying in DCU, and for the 3rd year of my course, I'm working as a sales and marketing intern at ScoreBuddy, and I'm also looking really forward to our webinar today to see what lovely things we can talk about. Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Laura. So we're off and running here today. I'm just going to talk through the running order. So there's 4 chapters to this session today. I'll be turning off the slides shortly and we'll talk them through. So we'll kick off because we have to. We're contractually obliged to kick off with AI. It's 2024, we have to kick off with AI. But it being a learning and development and coaching focused discussion, we're also going to discuss skills. Skill development and acquisition within the workplace. We'll be talking about the location for learning, how is it embedded within your systems and your processes, and also we'll be talking about social learning, learning together, but also learning from home and the journey that the colleague goes through as they start to acquire knowledge. So that's the running order. In terms of what we're going to cover first, we're going to cover AI. So I'm going to stop sharing and next, and stop sharing. I've successfully learned how to do that. So AI is the hot topic for 2024, and we're all from the world of learning and development. And in order to preserve learning and development at the center of our organization, we collectively need not only to have a view on AI, but also have suggestions to the rest of the business on how best to incorporate AI within the L&D function. Now that could go across from creating content to delivering content. AI will be at every step of the learning pathway for our colleagues. So first of all, Lara, can you launch a quick poll on AI to get a sense of how the audience members here are incorporating AI into their L&D processes? So for the audience, you'll see a poll come in front of you shortly, and if you can start to consider your answers. So the poll is about how have you introduced AI into your learning processes within your organization. So whether or not it's being used in developing content, whether or not you're using it to identify areas for training. Also, are you using it to increase engagement with training, or are you not using AI yet? So we'll just give it a couple of seconds there to see what obviously the AI attendees at this webinar have already voted. Let's see what they say. Okay, I'd say we've got enough responses there if you want to end and share the results. So it's pretty polar in terms of AI is being used to develop content or it's not being used at all. So it's very interesting, I suppose, for this discussion in terms of how we're incorporating it. So first up, Francis, how have LearnUpon introduced AI into your LMS function?
Yeah, it's interesting, this poll, too, in terms of, we obviously are not an AI company, we're a learning company, and so we weren't going to do anything transformative with AI. But we talked internally about how do we use AI to fill a gap that we know is already there, and that isn't created because of AI. And I think and hopefully this resonates with people on the call, but I think the thing that we don't talk about much in learning and development is nobody does it very well. I say that as, a manager of a team in a company who doesn't do it very well in my job. I'd say it as an employee who doesn't do learning very well in my job. And so I wanted to look at AI and think about it of how do we use AI to provide opportunities for people to scale and improve the things that we've known for 50 years need to be improved in learning. So for us, we talked about definitely content creation, but there are companies who are doing that and ahead of us in terms of content creation. We thought about it in terms of exam creation, though. So how can you use AI to create assessment questions, not to replace the assessment questions you've already written, but to create the ones you never had time to write. So assessments are probably one of the hardest things to do and one of the things that get forgotten, and they're hard to scale and to keep doing. So we thought about it of how can we use AI to help people who are creating training and content create assessment questions to help assess learning, to help increase engagement. So again, not to take, if you're already writing your questions, that's great, but likely people were not. And we thought about it too in terms of the coaching and reflection piece of it. So I would say that's another thing that we aren't doing very well in L&D across the board, is helping learners reflect and apply their content. And it's also a scaling issue of, you can't sit down with every learner and ask them to think about how this is going to apply to their job, to think about what they've learned and how they're going to apply it later, to reflect on their learnings, to think about what they still need to learn. So we've built an AI coach around that, of essentially the skill or the part that L&D is doing in your company is helping to write the script for the coach. So what is the voice that you want this coach to have to your learners? How are you talking to them? How can that reflect the way that their managers would talk to them? So we've been thinking about that both as for our employee training, but also we do customer training. And so how can we scale our customer training by creating an AI coach to help prompt our customers to think about the training, to think about what's next, to think about the application. But what AI offers is for us to build a coach that sounds like us. Customer service and the way that we interact with our customers is such a key of our success and such part of our brand at LearnUpon. So building a coach that actually sounds like someone who works at LearnUpon, that sounds like your customer success manager, that sounds like your implementation consultant, that sounds like your manager, and not to replace them, but to provide the things that they have not had time to do, to coach you along in your training.
The kind of theme that's coming out from your answer is I'm hearing the word kind of consistency. In other words, that by introducing the AI coach and you've obviously put a lot of work into tuning it and getting the tone of voice, but it will be a consistent feedback mechanism for the learner. Because I know when I approach my boss, sometimes he's quite busy, and I mightn't get the FaceTime or the discussion depth that I'm looking for at that moment, and particularly if it's about an experience from which I am learning. And so, in other words, that AI coach would give a very consistent experience to the learner. And then it's a very smart idea to point AI at writing the questions. There's not, a good question is going to inspire a great answer and a great learning experience.
And a good writing assessment questions is an art and a skill. And unless you want to hire someone to do that for all of your content, it really is something that you can scale and just provide, or to use your assessment writing questions for your high stakes exams and then use AI to again, not to replace anything. I think that's been important for us, but to really be honest with ourselves of the gaps that we've left and helping AI fill those gaps, whether that's gaps in manager feedback or just in our own content.
Very good. Well, look, that's a really clear approach, and it speaks very much to the poll answers in terms of people are using AI to create content, but it's not that much of a jump to start to use AI to consider the questions that could be asked as part of the learning experience, and then you're very much going into the AI coaching part, which I think is a very beneficial experience for the learner to have a great reflective coach to bounce the experience off. Thanks, Francis. Roni, you work for Abtran, and Abtran are a world-class outsourcing services organization. How are Abtran considering incorporating AI as a support for enabling performance of agents?
Similar to Francis's experience, AI is a tool, and like any tool, it works best when you know how and when to use it. In our L&D function, we're using generative AI to help make our content more effective, more engaging, and that could be anything from taking a script in a video and asking the likes of a ChatGPT to make it funnier, or to add some jokes, or to tailor the existing jokes to an American audience or to an Irish audience where it's going to be slightly different, to making sure that the narrative that we're trying to weave through the learning is evident throughout. We're also using it to create generative videos for quality alerts or for a day in the life. It's not doing anything that our teams could not do. It's just enabling them, enabling their performance a little bit faster. And that potential for using AI capabilities to provide opportunities for people, the AI coach is something that I'll definitely be exploring actively in 2024. But we're also stepping outside of the content generation piece. We're using it to analyze feedback, to identify the themes and the key messages that we're getting in our surveys and assessments. So it's quite simply then allowing it's fitting into that learning cycle. And it's the same with enabling broader performance. It's the same with our advisors. So we're the first of AWS's clients in Ireland to implement Amazon Q, which, if you haven't heard of that yet, is their AI agent assisted knowledge base integration. And that helps us, that's using AI to put the right information in front of our agents when and where they need it, which results in their job as being easier. It results in them being more confident, and that kind of confidence comes across, and they can deliver a better standard of service to the customers that they're dealing with. So obviously that has an impact on our clients and on our overall business. Using AI to benefit our advisors brings that benefit to the whole business.
Yeah, we're beginning to hear this theme repeated a lot across our customer base of customer service teams. AI can actually increase the confidence of the agents. It's almost a crazy sentence, but it does. By them engaging with AI coaching, AI summarization, automation tools, they actually begin to feel more empowered, engaged, and capable. and then they work with their managers in areas which are slightly more complex and where the learning path is more involved. But it is beginning to seep into the confidence level. So it's fantastic to hear that. I do want to share, just as we work through the presentation, share a great blog from LearnUpon. So I would encourage attendees to the webinar to bookmark LearnUpon's content in relation to how they're developing thought leadership on AI and learning and development, because I would echo the topic of topic one, which is we all have to have a point of view about AI. And there are a ton of use cases that both Roni and Francis have spoken about there that you can begin to incorporate into your L&D function that are AI generative. So fantastic. Okay, we're going to go on to topic two now, which is about skills. I've suddenly lost the skill of being able to share PowerPoint, so it just shows how quickly you can lose things. Okay, so how many people in the audience, and we've a substantial audience who've joined us here, and first of all, just check actually in terms of questions that are coming through on AI, and there is actually one coming through for yourself, Francis. Francis, what is the benefit of the AI coach that you have seen?
So we've been testing it as customer zero. So we've been testing it internally for our employee training, and some of it is that everyone talks about wanting learning to be more interactive, and learners share that too. And it's definitely something that I hear customers say, of as one of their goals of I want our learning to be engaging. I don't love that as a goal. I don't think that that's a business result in and of itself. But I think the idea that if we can say that when something is engaging, and this we do know, when something is engaging, learners are more likely to complete the training. This was a study I did at a previous company, but relevance for content is always going to be the most important thing. So what determines someone completing a course is always going to be how relevant is this to my job or to my professional interests. But close behind that is how engaging do I feel this course was? And the things that people think are engaging, it's really interesting because this was all on demand content. So it's not a live instructor. It could be a video from an instructor. But to make people engaging on camera is really difficult to do, difficult at scale. And even great presenters, you can really struggle to give that. Does a learner feel engaged? Do they feel like someone is presenting information that cares about them, that understands them? And the coach, and again, the art and the secret sauce is really in how you write the prompt and creating that prompt. But can you create that engagement with your learners through an AI coach and making them not just feel that they're reflecting and applying what they're learning, but also that there is someone interacting with them that cares about them being successful. And it sounds a little bit creepy, I think, in some ways, but this is just an AI coach this isn't a real person. But it is based on real people who wrote the prompt, and creating that. And let's be honest, that's what we would do. I do recorded webinars for our new employees, for their orientation. And that's what I mean. I am just trying to make something engaging for people that I don't know, that I'm not interacting with in a live version. So I'm hoping that it begins to solve or give us more information about the engagement piece, and the engagement piece in what is an asynchronous environment, and whether that's in a 30-minute session or a 5-minute micro learning piece of how can we create that engagement and then start to use that to create the connections between learning and performance. So it's both of those things. I don't want to talk about engagement just for engagement's sake, but we know that engagement plays a role in both people completing training and also their ability to apply that training to their job.
But also, For those of us on the call who have a fitness app or perhaps a dieting app, a lot of the prompts behind that are AI driven, and they do keep people on to plan. So I do really think, just for the person who asked the question, the benefit of it is it keeps the agent engaged in completing the learning. So there's a good endpoint. Okay, moving on to skills. So those of us who are here, including pets, um, those of us who have a musical instrument or participate in a sporting activity, we know how much effort goes into skills acquisition and development, and it can have a huge positive impact on how we feel, how we perform, how we approach change, and simply it makes us love learning and development. So with that in mind, let's quickly launch a quick poll, Lara, on the skill acquisition, because I'm very interested to see what is driving out there skill acquisition. Is it part of a short-term need, or is it a long-term plan within your, and I can see the results coming through so far. That's interesting. Okay, so we'll see for it to get above the 80% again, and we will, so about half of you voted so far, so keep voting. It's an interesting split. I'd say if you can end the poll now. So it's a 1/3 to 2/3 in terms of short-term needs are still driving skills development, but it's good to see long-term plans are representing 2/3 of the skill acquisition and development plans. So that's a nice split to show. Roni, what's your view on enabling performance and developing skills, and how do you support a real sense of purpose in engaging with the learning? Because skill acquisition can be tough. How do you approach it?
Well, I think the results of the poll are quite interesting, and I was trying to think which one I would have chosen myself. And I think I don't think it's as black and white. I think at times it's one and at times it's the other. I know for just like with AI, and Francis made this point earlier, enabling skills and performance needs to have contextual relevance. There is very little, if any, incentive for someone to learn a skill that they won't be able to use or have no interest in using, or that won't positively impact their lives or their work or their day to day. And sometimes a skill is a means. I needed to be able to parallel park for my driving test, so I invested time and energy into learning that, into making that a skill that I could rely on and pull out of the hat when I needed to. And now that I live in the middle of nowhere, County Clare, Ireland, I don't need to parallel park. So that skill lapse completely. There is no incentive for me to refresh it. I just look for somewhere else to park. It no longer serves a purpose. So while I do believe that usefulness and real life application is what leads people to engage with learning, as learning professionals, we need to recognize that each individual has their own unique aspirations, and that their reason for engaging is subject to change over time. And that then leads to that personalization of a learning journey. And that's probably a niche for AI to help us with in the future, where we're tailoring the experience to the learner's unique performance and skills, where we're able to pull out micro learning pieces and craft that almost like building a recipe, and putting in a pinch of this and a dollop of that we were able to tailor something to an individual. It has the potential to be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think you've bridged the gap there very elegantly between the short-term needs. In other words, sometimes we need to be trained on something just for a short-term period of time. We need to acquire a skill to achieve a certain goal, and then we don't need to invest in that skill subsequently. And then that's reflective in all of our working experience. And then a personalized, motivating, fulfilling the drive within us to really develop skills within an area that we've interest, and that can be a fantastic journey to go on with a working colleague, because you're cheering them along the way. Thanks very much for that, Roni. Francis, in relation to your experience, you've as you said at the start, you've 2 decades of experience in education. How do you feel about the approach to skills development that you see being followed in the workplace? Does one industry stand out as leading the way?
I don't know if anyone is leading it. I think it is absolutely a conversation that, and again, this is not a conversation that is created because we're talking about AI skills development. We were talking about that before we even had the internet. So this is the skills piece of it is not new. I think with Ronnie too, of thinking of it too as something nuanced and being able to understand what people are going to use those skills for. I think really important to help people understand there are skills you need for your current job that you need immediately. There are skills that you need to advance in your job or into a next role. And then there might be skills that you, for your own professional development interests, are thinking about building. And so, one, helping people understand how to access those training on those skills, and especially understanding the immediate piece of it of I am not a data analyst. I have no background in that or formal training in it, but I love it. Like I'd love to spend a good bit of time in spreadsheets, but I need to constantly be getting quick refreshers on pivot tables. And I never go to training and LearnUpon, and that's a horrible thing to say because it's my company, but I go to Google because I that's the fastest way for me to find a 1 minute video to tell me what I need to know about the pivot table that I'm trying to create. Um, and I think that I'm thinking about that this year with my team that I manage of customer success managers of I know what the goals are for the year and I actually can identify what the skills that are needed to achieve those things, and it's negotiation, it's consultation, it's change management. But what I can't do at scale, and actually I am a former educator. I would have the background to do this, as I think most managers would not. I could help them identify how to get those skills trainings, but I cannot do it at scale. And so I need a way for them to have both an ability to quickly find those skills and training on those skills, and then also to be able to contextualize it. So I need them to be able to say to their AI coach, I have a call coming up and it's a tricky negotiation, and point me to the things that I need to know for that call. Those might be refreshers, those might be new skills. But I think so much of skill development is where we've missed it in the past. It's not a one and done. It's constant reinforcement, it's applying, it's refreshing. And I think that an AI coach offers that, even in terms of content creation too, of assessment questions of how can you, what our job is as leaders and managers is to identify what skills are needed for the role, and that's a really tricky thing. But if we can do that, and if we can then lean into AI being able to point employees and learners to the content to develop those skills, that I think is the game changer, because that's what you can't do at scale. And that is the thing that most employees are struggling with of, I know I have a question, I know I have something I'm not sure how to do, but I don't know how to get there quickly.
Yeah, and I'll bring Larry in on this point because we're I really liked your answer, Francis, in that it's actually the delivery mechanism for training that is changing the most right now. And there's loads of context-specific chatbots or virtual learning coaches being released into the market, and LearnUpon are doing the same. So, for example, an angry customer bot, or a tough negotiating bot, those are real learning tools. But equally, the rise of TikTok, for example, has been very noticeable in the world of learning. So, Lara, what have you found in your research into the role of micro learning?
Thanks, David. And I think a lot of the things we've said already are actually really relevant to this topic when I was looking into it. And like you said, the way we learn is changing. and microlearning has seen a big rise and due to platforms like TikTok. But it's no different in contact centers, and what I have learned about it is it's very efficient. So, say, like Francis was saying earlier, if you need a quick refresher or if you need a specific skill, you can just click onto a 1 minute video, especially in contact centers where there could be like high turnover, onboarding a lot of agents, you need to learn quickly. It's good for agent engagement too. So, instead of sitting an agent down and giving them a big long, 5 minute, 10 minute pager of stuff to learn, you could just give them a 2 minute video and it will prevent them becoming overwhelmed. And it could be like to a relevant skill they need to learn that day or for the next day. And it's flexible as well, so they can dip in and out of the learning. There's no need for like a dedicated offsite training day. They could just, maybe they have a spare hour before their lunch, they can go and log into their micro learning platform. And then to bring AI into it, we've done a lot of chat about AI today. So you could use like an AI coach. They could spot weaknesses in your agent and deliver them like a personalized training training path. So say they're really weak on the way they answer calls, the AI coach could notice this and give them a little course specific to them. So I think everything we've kind of been talking about is really relevant to micro learning. So I would like recommend people to implement it into their company. So
Yeah, that's what we're hearing from our customers as well in terms of short, very targeted learning experiences, which all fit into a plan, is a great delivery mechanism for even complex learning experiences. And that actually is what we're going to move into in the next two themes. So we're going to talk about the location for learning. And this is a concept that we were preparing for this webinar, and we were asking the question that if you give somebody a fact sheet or a PDF and ask them to study it, is that a learning experience? Is that training? Like, here's a PDF or here's a link to a web page, go and read that. Has that been a learning experience? If you're brought outside of your system, outside of your contact center, and you're just given something, is that a learning experience? Now, we do know that, well, in a way it is. You have to be informed with the content before you start to practice the learning, and then afterwards you reflect on the experience and you consider what you do differently the next time. So that's the typical learning cycle. But this topic is very much about, where is learning embedded within the systems that you use? So first of all, let's ask a really simple question again by means of this poll. So to what extent is your learning system integrated with your main systems that you work as part of your daily job? So it's a case of we get to see the poll results as they're assembling. So there is a clear winner. You never know. So once again, yeah, I'd say that's about it if you want to share that. So the kind of conclusion you can see here is that for you guys in the audience, you have to go somewhere else within your systems to learn, and then you go back and you practice that learning in the main business system. So, Francis, knowledge bases are a key library for organizations, but also the AI that they've deployed. How do you at LearnUpon recommend organizations approach setting up their location for learning for their employees? Because we've just seen from that poll that the learning location is separate from the main business systems that they're using.
And I think this one is interesting. As much as we, I think, have really developed in corporate learning and had a view on corporate learning that is separate from academic learning, I think if we're honest with ourselves, we still do think about workplace learning from a classroom mentality, and that learning happens in some sort of classroom. And we've shifted what that is, what the classroom is. It could be an hour-long course, on-demand course in your learning management system, but I still think we think of it as that's in the hierarchy of learning, that sort of classroom-based, lecture-based learning is the pinnacle. And it's not at a university, and it's certainly not in the workplace. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves of what we think of as the most impactful or the most serious learning. We think you go somewhere else and you learn something and then you come back and apply it. And so I do think that there is a place for that type of learning, to say we're taking an afternoon to spend time in person or virtually to really dig into a learning experience or to spend time with an expert. So I absolutely think that there's a place for that. And I would be sad if the way we're headed is people think all learning needs to be in a less than 2-minute video. That's not the case. But the majority of the learning that we need to do our job, we need it to be available in the flow of work. And there are technical limitations to that, obviously, but if you just think about your day to day, the chance that you are going to log into another system and find a piece of content, whether that's a knowledge base or it's a course, um, or that your customers are going to go to a knowledge base or to go to a course, we just are seeing less and less patience for that, and willingness to do that. And I don't blame learners for that. We have made the workplace a very intense, high pressure, high paced place. So that's not coming from, I don't want to sort of say this is the Gen Z, no patience for things, no willingness to watch anything that is longer than 2 minutes. We've created that in the workplace. We have created a high pressure, high stakes environment where if I thought my team was spending an hour going to take a training, I would really ask myself, is that where I want them spending their time? Is that hour that they're spending on that training really the most valuable thing that they can do for the results that I'm expected to deliver? So but having the learning in the flow of work. So in the tool that you're using, and sometimes that's as simple as just, do you have single sign-on? Have you created an environment where somebody does not have to log in? Again, think of your own experiences when you have to log in to something. Chances are you're not going to continue, whether that's an online shopping or it is anything that you have to create an account or log in or enter a password. You're likely not going to do that. But also, that is the information that we need real time, and we have the opportunity to do that now. Where LearnUpon, we think about, so our product is a learning management system. It was built for people to come almost into that classroom model, but they actually don't want to be there. Learners don't want to be there. They want to, it's not a university environment. It's not a classroom environment. We don't need to create a welcoming environment where they come to a system and they're excited to take their training and to find it. We need to give them the training that they need when they're using the tool or with the experience, and whether that's with a support agent, whether that is with a developer, whether that is with a manager who's having it going into a difficult conversation. What would it mean to, I think about this example all the time, what would it mean to me if in my performance management system that there was a immediate content that I could consume 2 minutes before a one-on-one where I was going to have a difficult conversation? Incredibly meaningful, and it changes my performance and my team's performance. But the likelihood that I would go outside of that system to access that content before my one-on-one, I would not do it. And not because I don't care, but because I would not have the time. But you could dramatically change the outcome of that one-on-one if I had access and immediate access to a 2-minute video of, Francis, here's some tips about having a difficult conversation with an employee.
Yeah, I definitely think that world is coming where the business processes and our calendars are then integrated with knowledge we need for what's coming up in our calendars. That's, I think that's 2024 in terms of we're going to get little recommendations from Outlook. Let's see how that progresses. Ronnie, Abtran manages many different clients, and no doubt the learning journey, it never stops for your agents. How have you integrated learning into the flow of work at Abtran? Because you've so much data and you've so much content involved, like how have you positioned it?
It's a great question, David. And precisely because we have so many clients, it's not always a straightforward answer because uh, we need to adapt it to each of those clients and to what each of those clients requires from us. But what we have done at Abtran is we've positioned learning as part of a broader training quality and performance framework. And I firmly believe, and I'd be in the wrong job if I didn't, that those areas have to go hand in hand. Training is an enabler of future performance. Quality is a measure of past performance. So they're intrinsically linked, in my opinion. And we see that whole what we call TQP, training quality performance, as a cycle where the advisor comes in not knowing what they don't know. So they need to know what's expected of them. And that might take place as our onboarding, or if they're a more experienced person, as an upskilling kind of learning cycle. As they start to embed those skills, they enter what we call grad bay, but then they need to know how they're doing. So then we start looking at our quality monitoring and using our score buddy, and we look at our performance coaching. And once that part of the cycle is doing, they need to know where they can improve. And to Francis' point from earlier, how it's all well and good to know that you need to improve your resilience or your ability to handle a difficult conversation, but it's about knowing where and how to upskill in that space. And is that a conversation with your manager? Is that a 2-minute micro learning? Is that a 3-day course that you go on? And the different needs, that personalized learning approach is really, really important. But I think, sorry.
No, keep going. A question has come in that might be relevant for this, but finish your point and then I'll bring in the question.
No problem. In terms of positioning the learning, I think we can and will need to do more to put learning in the flow of work. I think Francis made a lot of very good, strong points in terms of, I don't know whether it is, I don't know whether everybody is the same, but I don't know if I'd call it laziness, but I'm not willing to step outside of my frame of focus to go off and specifically learn something. But if it's presented to me as kind of an option that I can pick from, or I can click on a link, or I can watch a short video while I'm doing what I need to do, then it's much more impactful. Things like our knowledge base, our robust knowledge base helps. Things where we've got kind of grad-based support, where you can get in contact with a subject matter expert and pop them a question and have them answer. So you're getting that kind of SME one-on-one focus when you need it. And I'm really looking forward and looking ahead to when our systems are either fully integrated or at least appear to be so, from an advisor perspective. So when they can't see where the CRM tool ends and the knowledge base begins, or when they have a micro learning suggested to them based on the parameters of the interaction that they've just had, or perhaps they have the opportunity to speak to an AI coach to see if they could have handled the interaction differently, and that's always available to them whenever the desire and the impetus for learning strikes. There's a lot of potential, but we have a duty to evolve to take advantage of it.
Roni, I think it's Roni, I was going to say, I think it's so funny that because I would resonate with this too. You and I both make our living off of the belief and science behind learning being important in the workplace, but I would absolutely raise my hand too to say so many times I'm not going to engage with the learning experience and I don't have time, or there's too many steps involved, or it just doesn't make it on my priority list. So if that's the case for you and for me, for people who absolutely buy into this as a critical piece of making a business run and be successful, then for people that aren't coming from that perspective, like that just is so amplified of what the challenge is, what the resistance is, and where there's just not the willingness to spend any more time than is necessary on a learning activity.
Mhm.
And I
It's
think that's a really good point, Francis, because we're able to do it with our advisors. They're highly scheduled. They run off a complete schedule. It's very micromanaged, even just according to the nature of our business. So for an advisor, we're able to say, okay, you have dedicated learning time, and it could be 30 minutes or it could be 90 minutes, and they're allocated and encouraged and advocated for. But once that you have a little bit of autonomy back, it is very difficult to retain that focus on learning. And if that is coming from somebody who's the head of learning, it does mean that as leaders, we need to be pushing it almost to our people, and letting them know that it is okay, and facilitating access to learning. And again, that all comes, the easier it is to access, the more embedded in the flow of work it is, the better it's going to be.
Does this tie into the question, which is, are there new roles that you're seeing being added to learning and development teams? Is
Oh,
this
that's
being
that's
reflected? Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think learning and development, if you go to any company, learning and development will wear slightly different hats in all of them. I don't think I've ever worked in a L&D department that I would consider to be overstaffed and overfunded. So so I think I wouldn't necessarily say a new role, but the whole idea of like instructional design is coming more to the fore, but definitely a new string to many bows. That understanding, and as you said at the outset, David, having a point of view on AI and how it can be used, and having a point of view on how we can enable skills and what's worth investing in, how we can see that impact that of the learning and development. That's definitely a skill set that needs to be developed within the majority of L&D functions that I'd be privy to.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'm just sharing the careers page at Abtran, and that what really jumped out to me was the really strong employer and employee message that by working in your organization, both sides are going to invest heavily in the co-learning experience, and that this will be a positive learning experience for the employee, and that the organization is truly invested in delivering a very strong personalized development plan for the individual. And I think it's such a strong message. You can tell I was scrolling down when I took the screenshot, because I think it's a profoundly important message for employers to give, that we're not just here, as was mentioned earlier on, to put the pressure on and to get the results, but also to invest in somebody's great career and to work through that. So we're on to the last topic now. So a quick poll to get this last topic up and running. So this is a very simple question, and it speaks to what has been discussed to date. Hopefully we get, well, that's interesting. Yeah. So thanks again for the prompt answers. We'll just see if we get it over the, okay, if you want to share those results now, Lara, thanks a million. It's very interesting how the world of work has changed, in that some organizations just are not running in-person training anymore. But obviously the main answer is yes, it's an overwhelming yes. So Roni, there's such a high focus on uh, training. So Roni, how do Abtran approach social learning and also remote learning? What use case suits remote learning most, in your opinion?
Well, I'm in a somewhat unusual in that I think almost any training can be delivered remotely if the infrastructure and framework is around support that learning is in place. So the move to remote learning for Abtran was the same as a lot of people, I'm sure, on this call. When COVID happened, it happened almost overnight, and I think there was a lot of advocates for in making the move to remote learning with a lot of people in the profession. but COVID really ramped up the, the agenda. There was no choice anymore, and it brought with it not only challenges but also insights that have allowed Abtran to make our current learning stronger than ever before. So all of Abtran's learning is now designed to be delivery agnostic. The activities and interactions will work well for both an in-person audience or a remote one, and there's alternatives if you're delivering the session in a classroom face-to-face or if you're delivering it remotely. But also having kind of a dispersed team means that social learning is less likely to happen without drive and support. Now we're in Abtran, and I'm a bit of an advocate for blended learning. So during our kind of new hire programs, during our Abtran Academy, which you would have seen in the screenshot, it's not just a piece of e-learning that you do, or it's not just an instructor-led course that you attend. It's the practical application of those skills in your day-to-day life. It's the tailoring of it to your specific role and your development journeys. And that means that we have to be a little bit creative with how we position kind of the activities and tasks, because they don't, you won't have one size fits all. And to circle it right back to the beginning, our good friends at ChatGPT can help with, how can we frame this in a way that more people can apply this instruction regardless of their role. That there's lots of opportunities to provide social learning, even if you're not necessarily face to face, but you have to actively enable them. And that force is the wrong word, but you need to create a culture where popping a message into Teams and asking a question to your entire team in a group chat is as natural as leaning over to somebody's desk and saying, how did you do that? Because that's probably the area of social learning that we may have lost when we moved fully to remote. And it's just that acceptance of questions and that willingness to help. And if you can see that a new hire asks the question, gets an answer, knows how to do something, you can see the next time that they're the ones answering the question. And that's evidence of that social learning happening in much the same way as it would have done in the office in days of old.
Yeah, and we're all obsessed sometimes with shortening the learning journey. So from starting the learning to then executing and then engaging and helping other people to learn. Francis, from your perspective, how at LearnUpon do you look to reduce the time between starting learning on your own and then reaching the end result as fast as possible, and then experiencing and sharing that learning journey?
I've been thinking about this a lot in the way that we work with our customers. And because you have our customer support agents, we have customer success managers, and then we have our customers. And actually, this is a learning community. If you're a support rep, if you're a customer success manager, you're learning things and you're looking to train your customers to teach your customers things. And so I would, because we train our employees, but we also train our customers of, I'll think of a customer success manager. So let's just say change management. So that's something that we've identified through calls and an assessment of the customer, that change management is really the thing that we're looking to address here. But why not make that learning collaborative? There's a customer success manager who is learning how to drive change management, so they have that learning piece of it. But also then, what could we put in front of our customers that is also helping them with that change management piece? And this idea that whether it's a customer success manager and their customer, or it's a manager and a direct report, or it's peers working together across disciplines, of the skills piece of it and the training piece of it, if we can automate that so that everybody has the skills and training, then we can actually say, but we have a learning community here where we are looking to, I was just talking with a product manager today, and we spent 10 minutes of me walking through Salesforce, weird Salesforce things that we have just at LearnUpon. And so we absolutely needed to do that. But really what we're trying to do is release a feature. And so the thing that we should be learning together is how to release this feature effectively. But we spent 10 minutes together, which was great because he's new and I'm glad we made that connection. But I wish we didn't spend our 10 minutes learning Salesforce. I wish we had spent our 10 minutes together learning how we're going to release this product, because that's a better feature release. That's a better experience for both of us. So I want social learning to continue. It's the most powerful, it's the most successful, but let's let's make that social activity around something that is a high level learning experience and not just we're coming together because we can't find the information that we need. And so we're just in it together of nobody knows where to find the answer.
Yeah, it's such a high value point to begin to end this webinar on, and that we started off very much talking about the use cases of AI. It's here, it's present. Some great ideas in terms of using it for the questions and also for the coaching. We all have to have a point of view on it. In relation to skills development, very much a co process with the person you are seeking to train, in that it's not just a one way you must acquire this skill. There's the engagement process around it. Micro learning came up. It's a huge topic. It's a huge delivery mechanism for training in a fast-paced environment, but it's not the only mechanism, but it's a key one. And then we spoke about learning in the flow of work, in terms of integrating it within the task and in advance of the task that you're seeking to achieve. That's very much, an ongoing learning experience. And then we touched upon the social learning, and as Francis summarized at the end, let's focus social learning on high value discussions as opposed to purely transactional, almost problem solving tasks before you get to the high values. So some very interesting points there. Thanks a million for joining us for the learning and development discussion. Thanks, Roni, much appreciated. And Roni's guest, Francis, many thanks. And Lara, many thanks as well. So have a great day wherever you are in the world, and see you again.